Okay, hi, my name is Fel the Blythe, and I hope I'm in focus this time because I filmed the entirety of my last video not in focus, which was sad because the flowers were blooming then and I really wanted to get a shot of me in that, but we'll settle for this. No, we won't settle because I ended up rewriting the script and I think it's what it wants to be now. So I'm a Hellenic polytheist, if you're not aware, so that basically means that I worship the Greek gods in the Greek way for the most part, but I do a lot of videos that are more personal, and this is one of them. I've talked about this before in a couple of videos about maladaptive daydreaming. Now, an important thing to note here is that maladaptive daydreaming is not officially recognized by psychologists. Some psychologists and psychiatrists will treat it as kind of a symptom of other things like OCD, PTSD, ADHD, but it is not officially a disorder in the sense that it has been gone through the craziness of the APA. So the first person who coined this term was Eli Sommer, who was a psychologist, or is a psychologist and a researcher from Israel, and he coined this term in 2002. So he defines this as maladaptive daydreaming. Also, I will call it MD throughout this video, so I don't have to keep saying maladaptive daydreaming. It is extensive fantasy activity that replaces human interaction and or interferes with academic, interpersonal, or vocational functioning. Now, unfortunately, Eli Sommer's work is some of the few academic writings, and again, it's important to note that it is not clinically recognized as of the time of this video. So daydreaming is a totally normal part of adulthood. Maladaptive daydreaming, on the other hand, for Eli Sommer's subjects in this study, it could take up to 8 hours of their day. That's a whole work day. This would have a profound effect on all aspects of their lives. And so that's where it gets the negative maladaptive denotation. And I'm going to get into the characteristics of maladaptive daydreaming versus regular daydreaming, because there are. So it has actually quite a huge online community because, again, it's self-identification because there is no diagnostic process. As I mentioned earlier, MD has a high comorbidity with things like post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, as well as neurodiversity, especially ADHD. All of Sommer's subjects reported childhood trauma. However, since then, it's not a guarantee that you'll experience MD if you've experienced trauma or specifically childhood trauma. Another aspect is, and what makes it unique as far as regular daydreaming, is that many people who experience MD note, not many, almost all of them experience a kinesthetic element such as pacing around, having to listen to certain kinds of music, or as well as physically acting out the daydream. So it's important to note that maladaptive daydreaming is not dissociative identity disorder, and it is not schizophrenia. MD sufferers tend to know that these are daydreams. Tend to know is important there, except when we introduce religion into the mix, which I will get into. And the daydreams aren't hallucinations. It's something that's seen sort of within the mind's eye and not the physical eye. And the characters that are dreamt up by the daydreamer are not like different personalities of that person. While you feel those feelings of those characters very deeply, you can experience what they're experiencing, you are not those characters. Rather, it's just a sort of a safe way for you to act, essentially, to take on different roles and explore complex feelings and situations. Don't worry, I'm going to give you a personal example of how that kind of functioned in my life and still functions to a degree. There are several proposed functions of maladaptive daydreaming, why it happens. 1 is disengagement from stress and pain. 2 is mood enhancement. 3 is wish fulfillment fantasies. 4, companionship, intimacy, and soothing. In the daydreams, the daydreamers don't have to be themselves. They can be characters from both real and fantasy worlds. They can be characters from mythology or fiction, or they can also be the dreamer themselves. The people that I have spoken to in my own personal life who experience MD almost are never themselves in their daydreams. I explained it to my friend yesterday. I was talking to him. It's like, it's not that I think my life is uninteresting, but like I can't, breathe fire or cast lightning out of my hands. So, it's one of the reasons I'm daydreaming because it's interesting, not because I want to play The Sims in my brain. So I want to describe to you the experiences of maladaptive daydreaming. So I'm going to use some quotes from me, as well as some friends, as well as some of the subjects from Eli Summers and others' works. So subject 1 in Summers' study had this to say: "When I am watching a film or TV, I imagine having a girlfriend sitting next to me. We talk about the movie, we share reactions, I embrace her, we snuggle up. This is a very enjoyable, loving experience." Now this subject one in this study does know that this imagined girlfriend is imaginary. For some people who experience MD, this can tend into delusion. I'm kind of being iffy when I'm talking about this because I don't want to diagnose, or I'm not a medical professional. In Summers' follow-up writing, Parallel Lives, he interviewed 21 people from around the world about their maladaptive daydreaming experiences, and participants noted that they experience things that are sensually very similar to external reality. Many said it was like having a normal conversation, like you or me are having. It is like reality with colors, smells, and tastes. I can hear outside noises, but I can block them out. I daydream with open eyes, but I can clearly see and hear my daydreams as if it were real. A close friend of mine, who was the first person to actually clue me into maladaptive daydreaming, had this to say: "My mind's eye in these periods actually become my primary vision, where my actual sight goes on secondary autopilot." Another noted aspect of maladaptive daydreaming is what Summer calls compulsive hallucinatory components, meaning that no matter how hard the subjects try, the compulsiveness just takes over. It's hard and nearly impossible to stop. One of the 21 noted, "I spend most of the day at home daydreaming. I live alone, so technically I find it easy to dream all day long. The anxieties that this is how I will spend my life are increasing. I feel like a ghost that misses out on life. The stronger my fears get, the more depressed I become, and then I need to daydream to make myself feel better. It's a vicious cycle." Summer noted that one of the things that sets MD daydreams apart from PTSD flashbacks or true hallucinations is the emotional component. Unlike in those unwanted psychological experiences, many MD sufferers use their daydreams as a form of catharsis, kind of like watching a movie. I can make myself laugh or cry. I can make myself sad, but I still keep replaying the sad scene. I can't explain that. I am still creating a sad story for me. And I know that it's not real. It is like watching a sad movie. You do that for entertainment, and it might make you cry, but you still think it is a good movie. I can definitely very much relate to that. It's a safe way to explore difficult scenarios. The feelings in MD daydreams are so dynamic, it's easy to understand how some researchers have even gone so far as to call it a behavioral addiction. It's like going to a 3-dimensional movie and becoming part of a virtual reality in which everything is super vivid and exhilarating and gives you lots of energy. Everything is so riveting and emotional. Holy cow. When I read this study, I felt so seen. For as long as I can remember, I have experienced extremely intense, vivid daydreams. At the worst for me, it could take up to 3 hours a day, and I would walk so much that it was actually physically hurting my body. Before I discovered the new age, I knew that these daydreams were just that they were just daydreams. Even though the sprawling metropolis of my mind made these experiences feel so real. Even that first quote, imagining a girlfriend next to you, I had done that before. Except, for me it was Sonic the Hedgehog. It's so hard to describe this as someone who has never experienced it. But it's like looking to your right and your eyes do not see the person that is sitting next to you. You can't smell them, you can't actually hear them with your ears, yet you're able to hear their muted voice through your mind's ear. You see their form in your mind's eye. You can feel them with your mind's touch. Even if I close my eyes right now, I could reach out and imagine and feel a hand on my hand, even though I know I'm not really feeling that hand. Even the daydreams about terrifying things and violence are often explored because you know that you are in control and that, theoretically you are in control. And it's really just a form of catharsis and processing. And then you can't stop. There's another quote in this study about people not being able to get out of bed because they're daydreaming. The amount of times I've been late for events because of that is just so true. I actually have to have a headphone ban for myself when I'm walking, because if I walk at all and have music playing, it's gone. The daydream takes over. This is kind of a nice segue into my own personal experiences with maladaptive daydreaming. Honestly, for many years, It ruled and ruined my life. I know that sounds very bleak and very sad, but I missed out on so many things in college because I was just pacing around my campus at like 10 p.m., witnessing and experiencing the beautifully complex lives of these characters that I would act out and that I would talk to, like, in my brain. And I eschewed social interactions, so I could spin out mythological tales that evoked a certain je ne sais quoi within me. I lost hours and hours and hours of my life to maladaptive daydreaming, and I didn't get it under control until very recently. I have OCD, PTSD, and ADHD, and this makes me kind of like the perfect cocktail to experience the symptoms of maladaptive daydreaming. My maladaptive daydreaming has actually shown improvement with OCD medication. The compulsivity, the obsessive quality, the self-soothing nature of MD make it very similar to OCD symptoms. And in fact, my psychiatrist and I treat maladaptive daydreaming as a symptom of my OCD. However, that being said, it does have some positive qualities as well, positive aspects, I should say. Now that I have it mostly under control, occasionally I will lift my headphone band and I will let my daydreams run wild. Now they're a little bit more under control and I can focus them, so I can focus them around my writing or for D&D, and this lets my brain, with very little effort at all, create these complex stories and NPCs with deep lore and evocative sensory descriptions. Back when it was still bad but not at its worst, I used to use it for acting. I could truly embody the character by playing out their lives in my head and in my body, letting myself become them while also kind of holding it at this very thin veneer of a distance. However, I don't want this to sound like an advocacy for purposely triggering maladaptive daydreaming. If you experience it, it can become addictive and it can very easily spiral out of your control. I have surrounded myself with social and otherwise physical activities that allow me to engage with it in a limited capacity while also engaging in the world. So how did it affect and how does it affect my spirituality? In every way. In every single way. I've spoken about this in a limited capacity before, but it is one of the leading factors that leads to my burnout and slumps because it is relentless and entirely unhelpful for my spirituality. I've always been kind of annoyed when people say, how do you know if it's a deity talking to you or if it's just your mind? And people will say, oh, if it doesn't sound like you. Well, if you have maladaptive daydreaming, first of all, you get intrusive and compulsive daydreams. And second of all, the voice likely doesn't sound like your own. It could sound like a god very easily, and you're not it's like you're not purposely making it sound like that. Your brain is just making it sound like how you would want the god to sound to you without really you doing it on purpose. This is just also not true if you have OCD. If you have OCD, you might be familiar with that inner thought that your brain just sort of triggers and it's not you. And that's what is so distressing about OCD. And then for me, they're the characters, inner voice of the characters, and like I don't always control them. Sometimes they just like insert my brain and I'm like, okay, I know this D&D BBEG is not gonna sound like me when he's prattling on about world domination. That just randomly happens in my brain. And then this begs the difference. Well, how do you tell the difference between what is your brain and what is a deity or a spirit? And unfortunately, my answer is that I can't. I legitimately cannot tell the difference, and that is why I no longer do astral projection, because I know that I struggle with maladaptive daydream and that I cannot differentiate between my vast inner world and another like plane of reality. That is one of the reasons why I don't believe in the clairs for myself, clairvoyance, clairaudience, and all of that, because right here, right now, with very little effort, I can conjure up the taste of chocolate. I can conjure up the feeling of sand beneath my fingertips. If I really focus, I can bring my mind to my mind-body in perfect clarity, the sight, sound, and feeling of the Punta Gorda beach that I experienced back in 2017. And I know that none of that is my so-called clairs. I'm not astral projecting before your eyes. I'm just very neurodivergent. One of the reasons I'm so strict with myself between separating my spirituality from anything that might be or could trigger maladaptive symptoms is because I have done the opposite. I used to spend 2 hours most nights in late high school astral projecting. That time period was one of the most difficult times in my life, just in real life. And that period was when I fell heavily into energy work, visualization, astral projection, clairvoyance, seeing auras, and so on and so on. Looking back now, I finally have the distance and groundedness to understand it for what it was. Some of it might have been real, but a lot of it was just my brain's way of protecting me from what was going on in my real life. If I astral projected to my happy place to go on grand adventures with spirits and deities, I didn't have to deal with the trauma that I was facing daily. And I didn't have to deal with the looming anxiety of leaving for college. I didn't have to face the alienation of leaving my community alone. This exploration led to a complete spiraling and my worst bout of maladaptive daydreaming, which continued on and off for nearly half a decade, until through lots of hard work and therapy, it no longer rules my life. And one of the ways I got my life back was to separate my spirituality from my daydreams. No more astral projection, no more having inner dialogue with spirits or deities, no more engaging in clairaudience, clairvoyance, etc. I had to admit to myself that I could not discern the difference, that I would likely never, be able to discern the difference, and that those practices, coupled with my depression, anxiety, and fear of the outside world, would only prevent me from living fully in the here and now, with my feet planted on the earth, instead of on my bedroom floor for hours at a time, missing out on life. So what do I do for spirituality? Obviously, I identify as a spiritual person, and I believe in signs. As a religious person who has personal spiritual experiences, the simple fact of the matter is that I cannot healthily engage in internal signs. So I ask for external signs. I include dreams in this because they function quite differently than maladaptive daydreaming. So for me, I look for signs in the clouds. I look for signs in the weather, in the birds. I also do a lot of divination, bibliomancy, tarot, dice, geomancy, astrology. Once I remove my mind's eye from the matter, or I allow a barrier to come down, what was once murky becomes so much clearer. This allows my practice to be very embodied, and instead of getting trapped in the isolation of my inner world, I can see the gods in the stars, I can hear Hermes in my friend's laughter, I can feel Zeus in the rain. Now I can live in the world that the gods made, and there's nothing more divine than that. Hi, it's me again. It's Fel from a little bit in the future. So I did some thinking. I went on vacation this week, which was awesome. If you saw my video last year and about how horrible my April was, well, this was a reprise of that vacation, and it was actually very refreshing. How I use guided meditations, because I realized that I don't not do guided meditations because of maladaptive daydreaming. For me, once I learned how to get present and in the moment with myself, then I was able to healthily use guided meditations. Now, I don't use guided meditations to communicate with spirits or deities, but rather a more internal approach to spirituality, if that makes sense. So I use it as a form of self-discovery and deepening my spiritual health, as opposed to a divinatory or communication tool, because I know that sometimes those intrusive daydreams come up, and then I'm able to look at them more objectively instead of trying to discern their meaning. And I can look at it as helpful information to internal symbolism and what means a lot to me in that moment. So yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, because I realized this week as I was doing guided meditations that they actually were helpful for me, but I used them to get grounded, to get focused, to begin my day, or to focus my mind towards a specific goal. So while I do believe in the spirit model in terms of spirits are real, gods are real, I do believe that there's power in psychology and in the psych model. So for me, I use guided meditations to focus my mind, to train my subconscious, if you will. So while I don't use guided meditations to speak with deities or spirits, they are still a very important part of my spiritual practice. While I'm on the subject, I'd actually like to take a moment to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Aura. As many of you know, I've been struggling with burnout. And since beginning to use Aura, I've actually noticed like a slow wakening up of myself and a newfound focus and energy. Aura is a new mindfulness and sleep app that was the winner of the Best of Apple award and used today by over 7 million people, and I'm one of them. I used to scour YouTube for guided meditations, breath work, binaural beats, because I use that stuff to focus. And it would take me quite a long time to search on YouTube for all this. But thanks to Aura, it's just all on one single app. And Aura even has things like life coaching, CBT guidance, and even bedtime stories. I was so elated when I realized they had Anne of Green Gables as a bedtime story, because I have been looking for that specifically for so long. Burnout is a manifold problem, and thanks to Aura's morning meditations, I've actually been able to start my day feeling a little bit more in control of the moment. What I absolutely love about Aura is how personalizable it is. Oftentimes with other apps, I find that I can get easily tired or bored of their approach to mindfulness or meditations, where a lot of times it feels like I'm doing the same thing over and over again. But with Aura, it's not one size fits all. So if I get bored of, say, guided meditations, I can change to ASMR and singing bowls, which is actually what I was listening to when I was writing part of this video. When you sign up for Aura for free using my unique link, it actually asks you your preferences. So it asks you your goals, it asks you what sorts of mindfulness stuff you like, and it even asks you what accents you prefer. I cannot stress enough how much I have been enjoying Aura. And if you're looking to deepen your meditations or start a meditation practice, if you just want to sample things and you're not sure what style is right for you, well, the first 500 people who use my unique link actually get to try Aura for free and then get 25% off. So thank you again, Aura, for sponsoring this video. So yeah, I wanted to pop in here in this part of the video to re-examine how I use meditations, because I realized that I was starting to make it seem like I don't use guided meditations at all, but I do. And it took me a long time to be able to, because I had to get present. I had to get in the moment. I had to put my feet on the ground. Once I really got in touch internally and settled some of that down, then I was able to use guided meditations. I hope this video was even marginally helpful. And if it resonated with anyone at all, then my goal in this video has been accomplished. So let me know if you have ever struggled with maladaptive daydreaming. Does it affect your spirituality? Do you resonate with these experiences? Do you try to separate between these experiences and your daydreams? So now I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons: Grumpy Grandpa, Hyacinthos, Ikeda Hukubi, Ambrose, Brooke Moody, Charles Schneider, Ember Kelly, Micromaria, Paris Mariski, and Tiny Atlas. Thank you again. I'll link my Patreon above. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. And I hope I'm in focus. Bye. I'll see you in the next one.